Grimwick and Norbert had gotten used to the walk down into the crypts. The lack of light no longer scared them. The scratches, moans, and screeches were no more than ambient music to them now. They were even beginning to find it easier to breathe in the stale air. But this was the first night for Penelope and Red, and they were terrified. "Professor, aren't students not permitted down here?" Penelope shivered. "Why wouldn't they be?" "It's dark and scary and smells weird," Penelope said. "Those are all a matter of opinion. Take a bat, for example. You find them in the dark, they have fangs and they smell funny. But are they bad?" Penelope shook her head. And then Red chimed in. "What about the dragon vampires of the Blood Curl Islands? That's a scary bat." Vine rolled her eyes. "You must have the same imagination as Mr. Soot. No such creature exists." The group walked in silence. The light Vine emitted was no bigger than when she first escorted Grimwick and Norbert down, but now the group of 5 huddled tightly in its soft glow. Vine stopped when they reached the archive. "And here you are. Mr. Soot can fill you in on the details. But this is the archive of the Crystal Era. You each will clean the shelf up to my standard. Miss Crest and Miss Rideau, if you clean the entire shelf, or the 2 weeks have elapsed, your detention will be considered served." Red snorted. "While we clean those shelves, what is Norbert going to be doing?" "Mr. Soot will clean and organize the remaining shelves, and he will do so until the task is complete. The semester is over, or he is inevitably expelled due to poor grades or poor choices." Norbert hung his head, and past him Red and Penelope could see the dozens of rows of shelves still untouched. Vine patted her wrist. "Well, now I must be going. You can finish up at midnight or wait 15 minutes past, and I will come back to escort you." Vine turned and started to walk away. "Professor Vine?" Penelope croaked. "Yes, Miss Crest. Did I forget something?" Penelope looked at the ground and fumbled over her words. Arthur. It's not fair." Vine stepped closer. "What is not fair?" Penelope tried with more resolve. "Norbert didn't start the fight with Arthur a few weeks ago. I don't think Norbert even did anything in retaliation. It's not fair that he's down here and Arthur gets off unreprimanded." Vine smiled. "My dear, do you think Mr. Soot is down here because of his ongoing troubles with Mr. Bog?" Penelope nodded her head. "And is that why you're helping Mr. Soot with his most recent setback? Out of guilt?" Penelope stopped nodding, but her face affirmed it. Vine's smile grew into those sinister curls of hers. "My dear, I do not care if 2 student mages squabble. I think it's a good reflection of the world that we live in. I don't even care if they defend themselves using magic. So, no, Mr. Bog's behavior causes me no concern. In fact, I wish more students took his approach to scholarly pursuits. But, Penelope stammered as she was trying to organize her thoughts, but Vine raised her finger. "But there are a few things in this world that I do find troubling. And Mr. Soot has done one of those things, far more heinous than any antics I've observed from Mr. Bog." "But Arthur is a bully," Penelope finally got out. "Yes," Vine nodded. "And you seem to have taken a liking to him, Miss Crest, perhaps even enabling his behavior. Still, what Mr. Soot has done is unforgivable, and in my opinion, a semester's worth of detention is far too light a punishment. Back in my kingdom, he'd be hanging from the gallows by now." Red looked at Norbert in awe. Penelope looked at Norbert in confusion. Grimwick looked at him with a look of, "Vine played us again." Anger crept into Penelope's voice. "That bad, huh?" Vine smiled. "That bad. But since you've agreed to this detention, you'll have plenty of time to ask him about it yourself. I hope you don't feel so guilt-ridden anymore, Miss Crest." Professor Vine stopped just outside of the archway. "Oh, and Mr. Soot, do remember our little agreement. I told you not to tell anyone of your actions. Breaching that would be a break in trust and ruin the credibility that I've established here in the school. And I think that would be worthy of a 3rd strike in its own right. But I doubt that Miss Crest and Miss Rideau are going to let their detention go by so quietly." She made eye contact with Grimwick. "Enjoy your time together." Norbert did his best to dust the shelves, but the 2 pairs of glaring eyes were making it difficult. Penelope's and Red's stares were so unbearable that Grimwick sat as far away as he could from Norbert without triggering their tether's portal. Penelope broke the silence. "And you let me believe you were down here because of Arthur? Now I see you are no better than him, you lying oaf." "Yeah," Red chimed in. "Tell us what you did to get down here." "And to think I felt sorry for you. I was just trying to be nice," Penelope continued. Red had her own agenda. "Did you pay Arthur to be mean to you?" Norbert just tried to dust the shelves, but they continued to berate him with more questions. "Ugh, 2 weeks down here with you two losers and your ugly cat? Did you steal something from the professors? I could be studying or sleeping or hanging out with Arthur. Why is my life so hard? Did you murder someone? So stupid. I can't believe I'm down here with you. Norbert cried out. Stop it. Stop it. All right, I'm a failure, and I'm a loser, and I'm an idiot, and I don't want to be here either. I didn't ask you to stick up for me. It's just the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me, and I was too stunned. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry. Just let me dust in peace. I've got a lot to do. I'll even dust your cells if you just leave me alone. But Penelope and Red did not take him up on the offer, and they went to their designated stations and began to make quick work of their shelves. And Norbert sobbed to himself as he haphazardly swiped dust off the books. Grimwick cracked open one of their textbooks and began to read. Grimwick read just loud enough so Norbert could hear, but he doubted Norbert was paying attention. But at least Grimwick thought it was better than listening to Norbert sniffling. Eventually Grimwick gave up on that and just began to read to himself silently. Some time passed in the silence, with everyone dusting their own respective shelves. Then the slithering of chains broke that silence. What was that? Penelope asked. They say that there's shadow monsters who gobble up students who wander down here, Red offered. They do not, Penelope said. They don't tell the pretty ones, Red said. They are the first ones to go. Shut up, Penelope yelled. Then the moan echoed from the hallway. The sound of rattling chains shuffled closer. Grimwick moved closer to Norbert, as did Penelope and Red. The moan sounded more full than last time. Grimwick looked around. He never did get to take some of that ghost-fire chili. That's all right. They had plenty of books. Then the creature came into view. It was just as it was last time, torn robe, shackled limbs, and stringy hair that floated, but its body looked fuller, less like a skeleton and more like a human. The faded skin still clung tightly, but it was still more substance to its features. It offered a smile, revealing a mouth of rotted teeth. All the students let out a scream, which seemed to delight the creature. Norbert began to pull books off the shelf. Red and Penelope hid behind him. The creature was no longer dragging its feet, but walking at a slow pace, an arm outstretched, its hand glowing in the soft green light. Grimwick could smell the magic in the air. He looked back towards the students. They seemed frozen like statues, their expressions unchanged. Norbert, with his book held tightly in the air. Red's and Penelope's eyes were tightly shut. Only Norbert's frantic eyes were in motion. He made a sound of, Grimwick, which probably meant help, Grimwick. Grimwick sprang into action. The girl's eyes must be closed, so it was enough for him to move around freely. He jumped up on the table and startled the monster. He started to throw everything on the table at the creature. The books, the quills, the brushes, they all just nearly bounced off the creature, so he tried to conjure some fire. Still, all he could do was produce measly sparks. He began to hurl the flames at the creature. Besides a mere flinch, it continued its advance. When the creature was almost at Grimwick, he leapt up with his claws outstretched. His claws sank into the creature like rotten butter. Green pus covered his claws. As the creature tried to throw him off, Grimwick continued to give it all he had. But he was growing tired, and the monster's skin was healing itself. Then the creature snatched Grimwick with her claws, and threw him at a force that could only be accelerated by magic. Just as he was about to collide with the stone wall, he teleported back to Norbert and crashed into his soft gut. That seemed to wake him up from his trance. Norbert reached for the books and began to throw them again. If Vine came down, he could clean them up before she saw, but he wasn't going to die. This time, the books actually made connection with the creature. It just seemed to be annoyed by the books. Whatever Vine was thinking, this was no ghost. Whatever this monster was, it was nearly on the students now. Do something, Grimwick! Norbert yelled. Grimwick put his hands together and tried to create a fireball one more time. Norbert was screaming now, and the monster's long nails were outstretched towards them. Its hand glowed in a mossy green light. Something was very wrong about this beast. It was like their souls were being pulled towards it. Grimwick felt a tingle in his arm, then like the ignition of a grease fire. A small white flame was in his paw. He turned it towards the beast and let it go. But it wasn't just one fireball, it was a stream of white flame. It was like water rushing from a crack in the dam. Grimwick tried to steady his arm. White flames splashed everywhere around the monster. It screamed so that its features melted away and was becoming more skeleton-like. Then the flames snagged the monster's rope. The monster was now in a new flurry, trying to desperately extinguish it. But Grimwick didn't let up. The monster crashed into a bookshelf, and Grimwick kept his focus on it, burning it away, as the monster tried to put out the fire that was eating its robe and the flames that were splashing all about it. The creature wailed and rolled, trying to put out the flame. Eventually it gave up and broke through the ring of fire that Grimwick had created and went screaming down the hallway. Grimwick was ecstatic. Did you see that, Norbert? Real fire. Oh, I'm back. Oh, yeah. He tried again, but not even a spark. Must have used it all up. But that was great. Oh, that really takes me back. Grimwick looked up to Norbert. He wasn't moving, but he was no longer frozen. His lips were quivering. Grimwick? Yeah, Grimwick said, trying to make fire again. We, we. He didn't say anything, he just pointed. Grimwick followed Norbert's gaze. The fires had all died out, but the two shelves they managed to clean were entirely burnt. Scattered books, singed pages, and burnt runes lay all around the stone floor. There was no way to clean this up before Vine came back. Well, then we better start running, huh? Grimwick replied. Vine won't like this, and this will just be another strike for us, and I'm not interested in dying down here. Grimwick turned, but looking back at him now was red. Her eyes were out from her mopped hair, and they were wide in neither fear or amazement. He'd never seen her eyes before, so it was hard to tell. You can talk? She said. Ah, crap, Grimwick replied, looking down that he was standing up on his two paws. He looked to see if the other one had noticed too. Penelope was also unfrozen, but her gaze was towards the door. Her face looked as if the monster had returned. When Grimwick turned his head, it was far worse than any monster, or even two of those horrible creatures. It was Vine. Her eyebrows were almost to the level of her hat. As she took in the damage and destruction that had occurred, could almost hear the storm rumbling behind her.